Hello everybody, and welcome to the final Oscar prediction video for this year, where today we will be breaking down the final and most important category at the Oscars, Best Picture of the Year. Woo! Okay, this has been a long time coming, and this is probably going to be a very long video, so let's not beat around the bush. I will say that this year's Best Picture lineup is not really my favorite. Maybe we were spoiled a little bit because last year's lineup was really strong. But this year, it's got some good movies, some not so good movies. It's not really a lineup that I think we're going to remember. Looking back, we're going to be like, oh, those were all such great films. I think we're going to be like, they nominated some great movies. When they have a field of 10, they're guaranteed to get at least some right. But, yeah. Let's not wait around too long. Let's get right into this. 10th most likely to win is Emilia Perez. Okay, so if we're being 100% realistic here, this movie is probably not in last place, and yet I kind of just wanted to get it out of the way. Because we all know at this point that it's not winning Best Picture, and I think we're all sick of the crazy story that this movie has had, where I have never seen an Oscar-nominated movie receive this much backlash. People who don't even talk about the Oscars ever were talking about it this year, and were like, have you seen this crazy, bad movie that got 13 Oscar nominations? Everyone was talking about it, and a lot of them are probably wondering how this was even allowed to happen. Like, when this movie premiered at Cannes, why was it not booed out the wazoo like something like Megalopolis? How were critics like, yes, we want this to be a contender? And honestly, I think it's just because the movie is so big and flashy. When you're a critic and you see a lot of movies, you're going to see stuff that bores you, and a lot of the movies are going to sort of blend together. But Emilia Perez, despite everything else, it is not a boring movie. And the film does have some respectable crafts and performances that made a lot of voters perk up. And the big thing is the movie is supposedly really trying to uplift the trans community in a time where they could really use some uplifting. So I think a lot of critics were like, well, let's stand in solidarity with the trans community and vote for Emilia Perez. But, of course, the big problem was the director, Jacques Audiard, did not do any research into the trans community or the Mexican community, and this is a very straight, white, male French guy depicting two different cultures that he knows absolutely nothing about. And what's so funny, it occurred to me recently that last year's Best Picture nominee, American Fiction, kind of predicted everything that would happen with Emilia Perez. Because in that movie, the critics really, really love this book that they think is the woke choice, but actually all the representation in the book is so surface level and outdated and stereotypical, and the critics don't even see that. They think that they're being progressive, and they're not. And it's really funny how that sort of predicted everything that would happen with Emilia Perez. So, yeah, there was a point in time where people thought it might be possible that this movie could win Best Picture, and if that had ended up happening, it would have gone down in history as the worst Best Picture winner ever. Fortunately, that's not something that we need to worry about now, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I can only hope that after the storm has calmed down and we look ahead to the future, we can learn something from what happened. That in the future, voters won't be so quick to jump towards a movie just because it's seen as the progressive choice. They'll actually stop to make sure it actually is getting the representation right. And hopefully, they'll maybe allow people to tell their own stories. So, yeah, Emilia Perez, crazy, wild story of how it got here. It is not winning Best Picture, and we can all breathe a sigh of relief. 9th most likely to win is Dune Part 2. So speaking of crazy wild rides, it's kind of funny looking back when the first Dune came out. There were a lot of people who really, really loved the movie. Obviously, it got 10 Oscar nominations, 6 wins in below-the-line categories, so clearly a lot of people loved it. And there was talk at the time about how, oh, it's not going to win Best Picture because it is just part one of the story, but maybe when the second movie comes out, that can be like Return of the King and that can win. And that certainly was a nice thought, but that is absolutely not the situation we have today. Because Dune Part 2 only got 5 nominations. Outside of Best Picture, it got nominated for cinematography, production design, visual effects, and sound. And that really does seem like the bare minimum. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if it came very close to missing the Best Picture nomination altogether. And which is a real shame, because everybody pretty much loves this movie. Everyone agrees that the movie is great. So what exactly happened? I think it's a combination of a few different factors. One, there was a little bit of a been there, done there aspect with Dune Part 2. We've already rewarded this, and there's so many new stuff that we can reward instead. Two, I think that because the movie does not have a conclusive ending and it clearly sets up Dune Messiah, then it's like, oh, well, this isn't really the ending of the story. The actual ending is going to come later, so we can wait. I mean, say what you will about Return of the King and the many endings of that film, but at least it felt conclusive. They were like, this is the ending, nothing else is coming after this, which ended up being a lie, but they didn't know that at the time. So that was why it was easier to award Return of the King. But the big factor, the real reason why Dune Part 2 is not going to win the picture, is because the movie came out almost a year ago, way back in March. For a lot of voters, it was the first thing that they saw, and then a whole year passed, and they watched so many things in between then. Some of them might have gone back and rewatched Dune Part 2, but honestly, it's so clearly not at the top of mind for most voters. Which is a shame, because it is a great movie, and maybe if it came out later in the year, like a little closer to the election, there might be some people pointing out, ooh, this is relevant, because this is about, like, don't worship someone who is in power and becomes corrupt. But, unfortunately, we're just not in that reality, and while people certainly do respect the movie, it's just so many people have forgotten about it now, and it's not even close to the winning conversation in Best Picture, which is a shame. 8th most likely to win is Nickel Boys. Okay, so here we have a bit of an interesting example because this movie is based on a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, a novel that I read and really, really enjoyed. And a lot of us were thinking that this movie would be a top awards contender. But director Ramel Ross made a very interesting choice in his adaptation. He decided he was going to shoot this whole movie from a first-person camera POV, which was certainly a choice, and it proved to be a very, very divisive one. There are some people who absolutely love the choice and think it really helps the movie, and some people who hate it and think it's way too gimmicky. And honestly, I can understand either perspective, but clearly, this was way too divisive to ever make it that far in the awards conversation. Honestly, I'm surprised it got this Best Picture nomination. The fact that it didn't even get nominated for cinematography, which is like the defining aspect of the movie, means that clearly not that many people loved it. So I was not expecting it to get nominated. The fact that it's here is a big surprise, and the thing is, I know that there are some people who really, really love this movie and think it's the best of the year, but I also know there's some people who see this movie and are like, huh? I don't get it. That was pretentious. And that's not... You need people to generally agree on liking it if you want to win in a preferential ballot. So, this movie, I'm happy that it got this far, but it's not getting any farther than that. It's not winning Best Picture. 7th most likely to win is The Substance. So speaking of movies that are divisive, The Substance is certainly an out there film. This is one of those movies where it's really, really cool that it got the nomination. It's a genre film, only the 7th horror movie in history to earn a Best Picture nomination. And a lot of people have been rooting really, really hard for this movie all season long. A lot of people didn't think the Academy would go there, but we've seen recently with Everything Everywhere and Poor Things that the Academy is open to awarding weirder movies. But with that said, both of those movies were top contenders, with Everything Everywhere winning picture and Poor Things being the clear runner-up. And The Substance can't quite get that far. I mean, to be fair, the movie has a guaranteed below-the-line win for makeup, and it's quite possibly going to win actress. I'm predicting it. It could even potentially win screenplay, but that is a long shot. And at this point, it's not winning director. It's not winning... Actually, those are the only things it has, so it's definitely not winning a picture. The thing about this movie is, even though there are some people who really, really love this thing and are going gaga for it, there are other people who absolutely do not. And I have read the anonymous Oscar ballots. There are some voters who are like, I could not get into this movie at all. The body horror was gross, and it was way too on the nose with its messaging. And that's not a take that I agree with, but I'm not going to act like I don't understand it. Like, it's very, very easy to understand why this movie would not appeal to some older members of the Academy. There are some people who just straight up will refuse to watch a horror movie on principle. So, yeah, the fact that this movie is even here is the reward. Clearly, it does have passion behind it, but that passion can only take it so far. And so, the nomination truly is the reward in this case. Sixth most likely to win is Wicked. Okay, so if I'm being totally honest, this would probably be my vote in the category. And maybe I'm losing a little bit of my film critic cred there, but I'm a theater kid, and I've loved this stage musical for a long time. I think a lot of theater kids love this musical. It's one of the most lucrative musicals on Broadway. And with some other shows like Into the Woods, Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, where we've had to wait decades to see it on the big screen, the end result is usually at least a little disappointing. And this movie was not disappointing. This movie was the perfect version of everything it could be. Even with the controversial decision to split it into two movies, a lot of us didn't think that would work, but it absolutely did. This movie is really, really great, and the timing was definitely on this movie's side because it came out shortly after the election when a lot of people really could use something that was uplifting, and this movie delivered that in spades. So there was a moment when I thought, what if? What if people love this movie so much and it's just everything that the world needs right now and it wins Best Picture? And then that moment sort of faded. I think for so many voters, while they like Wicked, they see it as just a popcorn movie. And they're like, you made a lot of money, that's your award. Like, you don't also need to win an Oscar. Which is a shame because popcorn movies can be good too. And it's not like something like Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, just because a movie has a giant budget behind it doesn't mean... If anything, that makes it more impressive when you get something as good as this, because there's that many men in suits fighting for creative control. And this movie really was John M. Chu's vision, and there were a lot of people involved who loved the source material and wanted to do it justice. And so, yes, it's a big-budget blockbuster, but it's also really, really well done. But the other thing is that it's only half of the story. Now, granted, I actually think this movie works a little bit better than something like Dune or Spider-Verse because the place where it ends doesn't feel like a cliffhanger to me. It feels like it ends in a satisfying way while still leaving over a little bit of loose threads. It sends you out on a high, which is not exactly what I can say for Dune or Spider-Verse. But yeah, if this movie was going to win anywhere, it would have won SAG because the actors in this movie are so beloved and they really overshadowed it with nominations. Or it would have won PGA because it made all the money. Or the Golden Globe for Comedy Musical, which they did not award it here. And because they have their special box office category, which I really, really wish that they would just get rid of because it just gives them a convenient excuse to not reward the popular movie in Best Picture. So... it's a real shame. I love this movie. I have no idea what part 2 is going to do awards-wise. It's definitely not going to do a Return of the King. I think it's... I don't know. The second half of the story is definitely the harder part to get right anyway, so we're all sort of crossing our fingers for it. But at any rate, this is not winning Best Picture. Fifth most likely to win is A Complete Unknown. Okay, so... I don't know I don't know how well that this is going to do on a preferential ballot. I think it's going to place relatively high because it's a music biopic, and we've seen that the Oscars really, really love music biopics. Notably, Rocket Man, even though a lot of people on film Twitter couldn't stand that movie, I have heard from insider sources that that movie was a very, very likely number 2 for Best Picture. So anytime you complain about Green Book winning, we could have had Bohemian Rhapsody. Because a lot of people just love the music biopics, and personally I think it's a bit unfair, because a lot of the times with these movies, we're not necessarily rewarding the movie itself, and we're just rewarding the musical artist who did not make the movie, and this is not what you should be rewarding, but a lot of voters are just like, oh, I love Bob Dylan, I'm gonna vote for that movie. And so, it's pretty clear on sheer merit this should not be close to the winning conversation, but I can't deny that this movie has exceeded expectations, at least in the first round of award season, the nomination round. It was getting nominated at every single guild. And then, once it came time to win stuff, it only won a few things. Like Chalamet won SAG, and I think recently it won a Sound Award, but it hasn't dominated the way you would need. It doesn't have a major award that it would need to be considered a real contender to win picture. And yet I can't shake the feeling that a lot of voters are going to have this high because voters just love this type of movie. And I saw one anonymous ballot that said, of a complete unknown, they just don't make movies like this anymore. And I'm like, are you living under a rock? They certainly are. They make movies like this every single year, and you always nominate them. But, yeah, I wouldn't vote for it. I think it's probably not winning, but I think it's probably going to come maybe closer than we think. Fourth most likely to win is I'm Still Here. Okay, shout out to all the Brazilians in the chat right now. I know you're all very, very excited to hear me talk about this movie. Realistically, it's probably a little bit lower than this, but you know what? I feel pretty confident placing it this high. Because this movie is a bit of an unknown factor in the race. This was a surprise nomination, and we've seen in the past with movies like Coda and All Quiet on the Western Front, both of those movies sort of peaked late in the season. With Coda, no one was taking it seriously as a contender to win until after Oscar nominations. It only got those 3 nominations, and then SAG happened, and then people were like, wait a minute, we love this movie, let's give it Best Picture. Something kind of similar happened with All Quiet, where for the longest time it was just getting international feature nominations, and then BAFTA was like, nope, this is an across-the-board contender. And so I'm Still Here became one of the most beloved awards movies in the year very, very late. Arguably after its surprise Best Picture nomination. Because a lot of people, even if no one was predicting it to be nominated, no one is upset that it's here. People are like, oh, hey, not expecting you here, but come join the party. And what's so funny is there was a moment earlier on in the award season where we weren't really sure what the frontrunner was going to be, and I saw a lot of people comparing the Best Picture race to the plot of Conclave, where like everyone has their own little controversies and scandals, and it's all about picking the best one that's going to unite everyone. And when I thought about that, I was like, well, which movie is the Cardinal Benitez of the race? Spoilers for Conclave. And it's pretty clear that movie is I'm Still Here. It's the unknown factor, but everyone likes it. Hasn't seen one person who doesn't like this movie. So I have a feeling it's actually going to place pretty high on the ballots, but I can't in good consciousness say it's going to win. I think it might actually have a better chance than every movie I've ranked below it, which is pretty crazy, because Emilia Perez I put at the very bottom of the list, and that had a major precursor win. And then all of these other movies I've listed after that do not have a major precursor win, and yet I think I'm Still Here. There are going to be people who are really going to bat for this movie. It's tricky because we can't really see a narrative take place because this movie isn't really nominated anywhere, so we can't see more televised wins for it. But I'm not going to underestimate the Brazilian hive mind. I do think this is possible. I would need a little bit more solid data to place it any higher than 4th place, but something tells me that this is going to get more votes than a lot of people are predicting. Third most likely to win is The Brutalist. Okay, so this is one of those movies where, for a time being, it seemed like it could be a very real threat to win picture. It won the Golden Globe for drama, and there are a lot of eyes on it because, namely on the director Brady Corbet. The big thing with this movie is that it is a giant, giant spectacle made for a tiny, tiny amount of money. And people are so impressed that Corbet actually managed to pull this off, as well as generally moved by the story itself. But I will admit, even though this is a very good film, there was a part of me that always felt that this movie was gonna be Roma/Power of the Dog, where voters respect it, voters are gonna give the director an award, but they're not gonna give it to picture. In Best Picture, they're gonna give it to something that made them feel a little bit more emotion, ideally a little bit happier, because The Brutalist is a very bleak film. And now, if you saw in Best Director video, you know I'm not even predicting it to win that category anymore. So, I think this movie needed one more important win to really bring it home. It needed to win SAG. No, it wasn't nominated for SAG. It needed to win BAFTA. That would have been a very, very good win for it. But I feel like this is a movie that people have a lot of respect for, but some Oscar voters aren't even taking the time to watch it, and there was that AI controversy from a while back. I still think that this is going to win some awards on the night, but I don't know if I can actually predict it to win picture. I think that it's close. I think that it's a solid number 3. I think it's higher than the other movies that I've talked about, but it can't get far enough to be in the top 2. Second most likely to win is Conclave. Oh boy. So, as of right now, this is the only movie that I think is a very real challenger that could potentially upset the number 1 spot. Because this movie has 2 important precursors. It has SAG Ensemble and it has the BAFTA. Now, I do put a slight asterisk over those because it is a British film with a very large ensemble cast, so it does sort of make sense that it would win those. I think that if this movie were to be a very serious threat to win the picture, it would probably have taken PGA because we would need to see that it could do well on a preferential ballot. Because that's the thing with this movie. I don't know too many people who are super, super passionate about it and are like, this is the best movie of the year. But I also don't know anyone who flat out hates it. So it seems like the sort of film that is going to do very well on a preferential ballot. But then why didn't it win PGA? See, this is the thing. The movie is very entertaining. And you can argue it not for the reasons the director intended. I've seen so many people online talk about how this movie is basically like Mean Girls or Pretty Little Liars, where it's just a bunch of backstabbing characters being so petty to each other, and it's fun to watch on that level, which I don't know if that's exactly what they were going for, but hey, an audience is an audience, and it's funny that people are making this movie into something a little bit camp, but I don't know if this is going to be an awards contender. It is about an election, which obviously has some relevance, and it's also kind of about trying to select the best contender of a group of contenders, and it's kind of close to what's happened in the Best Picture race itself, which I've talked about before. So it would be kind of interesting in a meta way. Plus, as the Oscar voting period was happened, the Pope was in the hospital. So I wonder if some voters may have had that on their mind of, ooh, are we potentially about to have a real-life conclave? Which would certainly be one reason to vote for a movie. It's funny, if we do end up getting a real-life conclave, I can imagine the Cardinals, having just seen this movie, being like, well, here we go. So this is a good movie, and I think it makes a lot of sense that people have this as a number 2, but when some people jumped to predict it after the SAG win, I was like, you know what? I just don't see it. It's a British movie. It has a big ensemble. It's won every major ensemble precursor prior to SAG, so it makes total sense that it won SAG. I think it's number 2, but ultimately I don't think it's going to go the distance. My official prediction, number 1 most likely to win Best Picture, is Anora. Okay, so what a weird season this has been. Because I feel like early on, a lot of people were saying that this was generally the frontrunner. They weren't super confident on it, but they were like, oh, this makes sense as the frontrunner. After I think it won one of the major awards. It won the Palm at Cannes. And that had people really excited for it. And it placed within the top 3 of the TIFF Audience Award. And I've talked about this before, but I was not the biggest fan of this movie. And when I would listen to reviews and podcasts about the film, I would just be like, yeah, you're describing a totally different movie than the one I saw. But you know what? It did kind of remind me of the way people talked about Nomadland, which is just like, you know what? Clearly everyone else is seeing something that I just didn't see. It's not the worst movie. I will admit this, there was a point of time when I was like, ooh, I do kind of wish something else could win. And then the whole debacle with Emilia Perez happened. And I was like, no, I changed my mind. It literally was that meme of like, Honora, upgrade. Emilia Perez, go back. So now that we've landed on Honora as our frontrunner again, it's like, okay, I guess this can win now. I've seen a glimpse of something worse, and I don't want that to happen. Honora, I might not enjoy that movie very much, but at least it's not offensive the way Emilia Perez is. It wouldn't set the Academy back if this won. And this movie, it won PGA, it won Critics' Choice, and it won DGA, which was the big shocker for me. I was like, oh, people really love this movie. And maybe they were just really, really eager to land on a potential frontrunner after the Emilia Perez scandal happened, and we needed to figure out what our frontrunner was going to be fast. But everyone else loves this movie, and I'm very, very happy for them. This movie, Sean Baker, someone who's been in the industry for a while, people have a lot of respect for him, and people are generally happy about this. And okay, I will say this. I noticed recently, looking at my package for Honora, this is winning Picture, Director, and Screenplay, according to my current predictions. And some people think it could just win Picture and Director. Some people think it could win Picture and nothing else, which would be crazy. What's so funny is I'm not predicting any movie to win more than 3 awards. I'm predicting Honora and Brutalist to win 3, and then Conclave, Wicked, Substance, Dune are all winning 2 as well. Something else is winning 2. I forget what it is right now. But this season has been pretty interesting. The past 2 years, we saw movies win like 7 awards, and that's not going to happen this year. They're really spreading the wealth a lot. I don't really know what else I can say. Everyone else seems very confident about this, and I'm very happy for you. I'm very happy. I'm very happy that it's not Emilia Perez. That's something that we can all agree on. So, thank you very much for watching this video. I don't know if I'm going to make a video for the Oscars, if I'm going to break down if something crazy happens. I've got a feeling that something crazy probably will happen. At any rate, I'm probably going to be back in a couple weeks to do my year in advance predictions for next year. Because we're already got to start thinking about that. Thank you very, very much for watching these videos. I'm very proud I was able to get all 23 of them out in 23 consecutive days. I don't know if I've ever done that. I think usually I have to skip a day because something comes up. But this year I got them all out, and it did affect my sleep schedule in a negative way, but I feel pretty proud of myself. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.